With Yom Yerushalayim next Friday, we're reminded of the dramatic words of Mati Gur in June 1967, Har Habayit Bi'adenu. The Temple Mount is in our hands. The old city is once again under our control. One unique feature of the old city is the surrounding wall. When we visit Yerushalayim, we're captivated by the walls of Yerushalayim, and we're struck by the majesty and history that it conveys. It's not just us, but also the prophets were taken by the walls. Yeshaya says, Al chomosayach Yerushalayim, hifkadeti shomrim kol hayom v'chol halayla, that on the walls of Jerusalem I have appointed guardians to watch over the city and the people both day and night. Israeli singers Ruti Navon and Tamir Shalev sing about the Shomrei HaChamot, the guardians of Yerushalayim on the wall and of the entire people. The concept of a wall, I think, can provide an insight regarding the beauty of our community, can help us understand the relationship we have with society, but also perhaps help us navigate the tension that we're experiencing at the current time. And the tension I'm referring to is the stay-at-home orders, which are very important on the one hand, but also the desire, the itching, the fact that we're hoping to, at some point soon, reopen society and get things going again. And our parsha of Behar-Bechukotai presents a series of interesting laws regarding a walled city. So if a person sells a home in a walled city, in Yerushalayim, when the Jubilee year is observed, and nowadays it's not observed, so these laws don't apply. But if a person sells a home in a walled city in Israel, so then the seller has 1 year to redeem the property from the buyer. After the deadline passes, so then the home, the property remains in the possession of the buyer in perpetuity, even after the Jubilee, the 50th year of Yovel. This is in contrast to a home that's sold in an unwalled city in Eretz Yisrael, where the property can be redeemed at any time, and once it's Yovel, so then it reverts back automatically to the original owner. Another area of halacha where a walled city is relevant is in the celebration of Purim. We all know that when you have a walled city like Yerushalayim, they celebrate Purim and read the Megillah on the 15th of Adar. And in any unwalled cities in Israel and around the world, which is almost all of us, so then you celebrate the 14th of Adar. There's a legend about an Israeli scholar who didn't want to celebrate Purim, and so on the 14th of Adar, he would make sure to be in Yerushalayim, and then on the 15th day of Adar, he'd make sure to be in an unwalled city to try to evade the celebration of Purim. But for most of us, we love Purim, and we celebrate Purim happily, and we would like to celebrate 2 days, and in a certain sense, we celebrate Shushan Purim as well. The Gemara in Erechin presents two different models regarding the definition of a walled city. One model is called Hukaf Ulebesof Yashav, where there's first a wall and then it's settled. The other possible model of a walled city is where it's Yashav Ulebesof Hukaf, where first it's settled and then then a wall is built. And what's the significance, what's the meaning behind these two different models of a walled city? And if we accept the premise that walls are designed to be semi-permeable, and the purpose is really to control what comes in and what stays out, it controls the traffic. And if that's the case, perhaps we can understand these two different models as each one having advantages and disadvantages. The city that's Hukaf Ulebesof Yashav, the city that first has a wall, so then the people are safer, less vulnerable, less exposed. The disadvantage, however, is even though they're protected from the very beginning, which is the advantage, the disadvantage is that they're perhaps not able to experience the richness of the outside world. They don't appreciate what's outside the city to the same degree. Sometimes the wall is too thick and is not permeable enough. On the other hand, you have the model of a city that's Yashav Ulebesof Hukaf, where it's settled first without a wall, and then later on a wall is built. So for this city, the advantage is that they can interact more with the outside world and gain a better understanding of their relationship with that world. They can also think about what they want to bring in, what are the possible threats and challenges, and then decide what kind of wall and how thick that wall should be. The disadvantage of this kind of city, however, is that the people of the city, certainly when there's no wall, are more exposed, more vulnerable, and there's a greater risk. And I think if we view these two models as a metaphor first for our religious upbringing, we can see the different kinds of Jews. Some of us are born into a circumstance of hukap ulebesof yashav, where first there's a wall, and then it's settled and it's opened up. And this refers to Jews who grow up in a more sheltered community with the yeshiva education. You have religious families and community norms, and there's a greater degree of restrictions. And then as these Jews get older, so that's when they might go into university, to the workplace, and they go out into the world. And then you have others who are born into a circumstance of yashav ulebesof hukaf, which is the opposite of the above, where these are individuals that grow up in a they're more exposed to the world. They're immersed in society. And then maybe later in life, they think about taking upon themselves observance or raising their levels of observance and building that wall between them and the rest of society. And I think this presents all of us with both a blessing and a challenge. The blessing is our community, because the beauty of our community is that we could sit at the same Shabbat table and be inspired by both. We have an appreciation of people coming from both perspectives. And that's one of the hallmarks of the Beth Jacob community, which is that we're a big tent. And we're celebrating our Beth Jacob community this weekend with the gala on Sunday. And while we strive for religious and halachic excellence, but we're welcoming and inclusive and recognize the place of every single Jew in Am Yisrael and certainly in our community. And so diversity is one of the hallmarks of Beth Jacob, which makes our shul special and strong. But while it's a blessing about our community, I think it could be understood as also a challenge. Because as we encounter new scenarios in our lives, we need to decide which walled city approach is most appropriate to employ. Sometimes we have to opt for the more cautious and protective approach of hukaf, ulebesof yashav. We need that wall and we need that protection. And other times we opt for the more inclusive approach and more outgoing approach of yashav ulebesof. This also expresses the tension that we're experiencing during our contemporary challenge. And it's the tension of the safety of staying indoors with the interest and the desire to get things going again and to reopen society. And since in the near future, we're going to have to figure out some compromise between those two, it's important to recognize the validity of both sides. It's important for me to emphasize that we have to follow the stay-at-home orders and strict social distancing protocols. Our service of Hashem now is not with a minyan and not with Yehesh Mei Rabbah, but rather with V'chai B'hem, worrying about our health and the health of others. But as we move forward, we're going to have to navigate the tension here between a wall and an open city. And you hear it from different people, different perspectives. So from some people I hear that I don't want to get together with other people or get involved in any gatherings until they develop a vaccine. And nowhere is safe. And then you hear from others who say that I want to get back out there again. I want to get back out to work. Rabbi, I'm totally zoomed out. I am not a Zoom person and I want to get together with people again. And there's a validity to all perspectives. And so perhaps for the person who had the disease and now has antibodies, or who feels invincible, or perhaps is feeling the economic strain, which is understandable and things are very, very difficult at this time, perhaps for that kind of person who wants things opened up again very quickly, it's important for that person to recognize the ongoing health concerns and the risks that are involved if we open up too quickly. And on the other hand, perhaps for the person who feels vulnerable and at risk, that person needs to appreciate that society can't be closed forever because there's a lot of suffering, financial and emotional, that occurs as a result. And so in this world that tends to incline towards the extremes of each position, let's try to find the golden mean as we move forward cautiously and safely while reopening society and getting things going again. This is a parsha that gets us thinking about walls and our relationship with society. It reminds us of the blessing of the diversity of our community, but also it perhaps conveys to us the validity of the tension that we're dealing with. And the key is, of course, to follow the law, to follow halacha, and to engage cautiously and safely, to follow the restrictions as we hopefully get going again, to build strong cities, to build strong communities, and good times ahead for all of Am Yisrael and the entire world. Shabbat Shalom.